Kwabena Oduro, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. I want to dive right into this because I have a bunch of questions to ask you, and I appreciate your time. First and foremost, how excited are you to be attending your first ever Olympics, especially in a city as iconic as Paris?
First off, I want to say thank you for having me on your podcast. When you reached out to me, I was like, "Wow, I'm doing a podcast where, like, in my profession, I'm always doing the interviews, right? But here I am being interviewed about going to the Olympics. Let me tell you, I am excited. When I got that email saying that we need your services and you're going to Paris, I was ecstatic. I was confused. I was surprised because there were so many people who wanted to go. And like you said, iconic city being Paris, a lot of Canadians love Paris, right? So a lot of people who work for CBC all wanted to go. And when I got that email, it was just crazy. And how excited am I to go to Paris? We're very excited because honestly, it's my first time ever going to Europe. So I'm
Wow.
gonna have a chance to explore Paris, but I'm also going to do a bit of traveling after. I'm gonna try and visit London, Spain. So we're looking at Barcelona and then probably Lisbon in Portugal. So I'm trying to make the most of the trip. But in terms of the Olympics, this is like the biggest milestone in my career, and I can't wait to get rolling.
That's incredible, man. It's funny as you described the range of emotions. Yeah, I believe you said you were confused, you were excited, and
Hmm.
a few other things. And I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, it's the it's the Olympics. It's the biggest sporting event. Happens Summer Olympics every 4 years, so it's a huge deal. And of course, you're a journalist. I'm here in Ottawa, and I hear your reporting because I listen to CBC Radio
Thank
Ottawa,
you, thank you.
and they always there's plenty. Your stories are on there, if not every day, every other day. So we follow your great reporting work, and you cover all sorts of subjects. But
Hmm.
the interesting thing is, you yourself, you're a sports fan, right? You're
Yep.
a former athlete, and I'm curious to know, as a sports fan, Covina, which events or athletes are you most looking forward to covering or seeing in action?
Wow. I'm excited just to be there, right? To see all the athletes and all the professionals doing their thing. I got tapped with doing canoe kayak, canoe sprint, canoe slalom, and also I am going to be doing rowing. So that's this. Those are the sports that I got tapped to do. So I'm excited to learn more about those sports. Those are sports I'm not familiar with. So that's the challenge, right? Like you get tapped and they tell you like you're covering this and then you become an expert about that sport. But I'm a sports guy, so I love that. If I have time, I'd love to go check out some of the basketball. I'm a basketball guy. I played basketball. So I would love to check out basketball, some soccer, but even some of like the judo, the wrestling, the combat sports. I think that those ones are even like very interesting. Even fencing, you know. So, and I know you are a big combat sports guy. I think like those sports are like underrated, and I would love to like go to the venue and just check it out, just soak it all in, right? Just to be there would be amazing. But because I'm doing rowing, I am on the outskirts, so I don't know how much of the other events I will do. But with the way the Olympic works, just because I have a task doesn't mean like day of they're like, oh, this person is sick, can't do the thing. You need to go cover basketball. You need to go cover wrestling. So I'm just gonna be ready for my name to be called. But like any sport that I get to cover, I will be excited to cover. And it's just going to be nice to see all the athletes. Like, I'm a proud Canadian, so I want to see all the Canadian athletes, but it's also going to be interesting to see some of like the other countries. And I think that that's going to be like the biggest culture shock for me. Just to like, I know how Canadians prepare, I know how passionate Canadians are, but to be there and cover like the Olympics with all the other countries and like all the other languages and just seeing how they're prepped, their mindset, their facial reactions, the way they train, I think that that would be like some of the most exciting things that I'm going to see. And I'm really looking forward to all of that.
It's interesting because yeah, as a journal, like you're a journalist, and we see you covering all sorts of different stories, very serious subject matter, of course. And you're talking on you're talking with Canadians on all sorts of issues, this, that, and the other. And we see that versatility as a journalist and communicator. And I think although you may not be all that familiar with canoe rowing and all that, I'm sure it's going to be a smooth transition for you, as a journalist, especially as a former athlete and who can communicate on just what competition is like, the intensity that day, what I'm saying, like the psychology behind it. I'm sure you're going to be interviewing a lot of these athletes, and I'm curious to know, in addition to that, as far as the sports literacy end of things, how much support? It's probably too early to ask, but how much support are journalists getting on the ground when they're covering sports that say they're not all that familiar with, if I can ask?
Oh, brother, we're getting so much support. Like, I know, like you said, like it feels like it's a little too early to ask that question because I haven't touched down. But if I tell you, like the team, like my CBC sports team, man, they have like documents on documents on
Wow.
documents being prepared, whole websites on every sport, every athlete. Like every time someone qualifies, it's put in like a document. We have producers, we have like it's a big, big, big operation, and there's people on the grounds right now trying to make sure that we are more than ready. So, in terms of all the support that journalists are getting out there, it's going to be no shortage of support. And even when we're there, I know I have research teams who I can check stats with and all that. I have learned about some of these athletes that I never thought I would learn anything from, right? So it's like very, very, very interesting to get ready to do this and to learn about all of this because it's amazing. It's just amazing to see how much effort goes into putting together an Olympics. It's not just about going there and looking good and whatnot. There's like a whole team who works like all year round to make sure that we, the people who are in front of the camera and in front of the radio, are like well prepped. So excited for that, and like I'm already learning a lot about some of the sports that I'm not even covering. It's just like when you look through that doc, you just learn a lot of different things. It's crazy.
It's going to be exciting seeing the sort of content that's being produced. I'm just going to read some stats off of the Paris 2024 Olympic website. In terms of figures, they're expecting billions of television viewers worldwide, over 350,000 hours of TV broadcast content, millions of spectators, 35 venues, over 10,000 athletes, 20,000 journalists, 45,000 volunteers. It's insane. It's in 19 days of competition, 329 events, athletes from over 200 national Olympic committees, 200 countries, essentially 32 sports, including 4 additional sports, breakdancing being one of the new ones, which is going to be interesting, and 754 sessions and competitions and ceremonies. And it's interesting, Kwabena, because the last Olympics, of course, were held in Tokyo. And I remember seeing this news release, and I just pulled it out now for this interview. It's from CBC Sports, and we're basically they're talking about how they, all this content was available through CBC.ca, Olympics content, CBC Gem, and the CBC Olympic app, and they broke plenty of records. They said that Canadians consume nearly 17 million hours of digital Olympic content on CBC platforms. Question for you: what is it about the Olympic Games you think that makes fans worldwide want to watch all these sports, all these athletes, and get carried away in the drama that is competition?
Because I think like the Olympics is different from like everyday sports. Like I watch a lot of basketball, I watch a lot of hockey, and with those sports I feel like you need to know the players, right? Like anyone can pick up a game and just watch, but like there's something about knowing about the storylines and the players, right? When it comes to the Olympics, I feel like all the storylines are created within that month, within that 2.5 weeks. And like I say a month because of the storylines that come out a week or two before and like a week after. The people who are like, oh, my family made this happen, like the little things that you find out about the Olympic athletes, make it a bigger story than just a sports story. And like one of the things that I'm trying to do as a journalist going over there is to make sure that I remember that not everyone is a diehard sports fan. So they're not going to understand the lingo like we are. So just bringing stories from different people about how their training went or where they're from. Like there's one guy who does canoe slalom. He was born in France and he has a Canadian citizenship, and he's going to be doing slalom for Canada, right? But he's doing it in his hometown of France. That's a storyline that I'm going to be running with, because like it's crazy that this guy is from both places wearing another country's uniform and performing in the country that he is from, right? And that's a
Right.
storyline that anyone can follow. You don't need to be a diehard sports fan to follow, right? So I think that those are little things that bring a lot of the non-sports fans or people who just want, like you mentioned, drama without having to force to find it, because every day is a new day. Weather's an impact, conditions, home advantage, traveling fans, and all the things that are just happening in a place where the Olympics take place also adds to the story. And France is like a hot spot. Paris is hot, right? So there's no shortage of drama coming out of Paris, like politically as well. So there's going to be that kind of spin on a lot of the stories that we are trying to tell, because you can't run away from it, right? So I think like all those little things that don't only have to necessarily do with sports make it more interesting for people to want to watch the Olympics.
Absolutely. And we're under 50 days away from the big day. And just earlier today, I noticed a huge on social media, a huge uptick of more and more Olympic content within, I'm talking about Canadian sports circles. You know, we're beginning to see way more ads, sponsored ads telling these athletes stories. And what I've yet to see, just as a side note, is content explaining some of these sports, because as you were saying, like these are amateur sports. Unless you're a hardcore fan of these sports, or someone who you have a kid who practices it in one of these sports, or you're part of that community, you follow it outside of the Olympic year. But one thing I have yet to see is enough content explaining the rules of some of these sports. You know what I mean? Like it's something that I kind of wonder. I'm sure as a journalist, you'll probably be communicating that maybe with fans online, on social media, that is. But it's one of those things that I think for some sports, you kind of really need to, what I mean, get ahead. And not you as a journalist, but I think maybe the sports federations need to kind of assume the end user, the consumer, the fan, potential new fan, may not fully understand the sport. You know what I'm saying? Because there's so many, right? And we're not exposed to this all the time. I want to quickly transition to another question in regards to journalism. What motivated you to get into journalism, and what keeps you passionate about it? I believe you've been at the CBC for 4 years now. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is year 4 at CBC.
And you're going to the Olympics, man. That's
I know.
Amazing.
Yeah, exactly. 2024. I started in September 2020, and I'm going to my first Olympics in 4 years of being at the company. But also, it's like 5 years as a TV journalist. So it's like I'm still, like I said, I'm still surprised that I'm going. What made me want to become a TV journalist is pretty simple. Like I was hanging out with one of my buddies, and we were chilling on the couch, and he looked at me and said, "Do you ever see yourself hosting a talk show?" I was like, "You are crazy. I would not do that." He's like, "You have the personality for it." And I'm like, "You know what? I'm just going to pretend that I agree with you." And then I thought about it, and I was like, "You know what? I'm going to pursue this." But then after thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? Like talk show is not for me, So then after I was like, you know what? I want to do sports. So I went to Algonquin College. So shout out to everyone listening from Ottawa. I'm an Algonquin College grad, and I was never like really that like into school. I went to Heritage College on the Gatineau side. I played basketball there for 3 years, and my grades were just to like keep playing basketball. when I got to Algonquin, like I graduated with honors and like I was just so locked in. And that's the moment that I knew that I was going to try and pursue this. I got a job, I got a internship at Sportsnet. That was an eye-opening experience. No job came out of it. I worked at Bell Media in Ottawa. I was a producer for TSN Radio, going into the locker rooms, getting interviews with NHL players. So that's how I got my start. And then when I transitioned into news, one of the some of the people that I looked up to said that like you can do sports and do news, and that I started to transition away from only wanting to do sports. Now I, like you said, I do multiple different topics, and I love it. But at the same time, I get to do sports, and there's no I would not trade it for anything because at the end of the day, I'm going to the Olympics to cover the biggest sporting event in the world. So I'm getting my fix of doing sports because I've covered the Montreal team, PWHL Montreal team. I've covered the Alouettes. I've covered the Habs. Like I'm getting all the sports that I want to do. And here I am going to the 2024 Paris Olympic Games.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, do you know who's covering basketball for CBC Sports at the Olympics?
Yeah, there's two different teams. I don't remember their names off the top of my head, but they're covering it for CBC and Radio Canada. So there's two different teams covering it because Canada should medal if all goes well in both. So it's a very, very, very hot topic, and a lot of people are watching that sport.
I'm sure they are, and I think you should challenge someone on that team to a game of one-on-one, to see and switch
Yeah.
roles. Whoever wins, if you win, that person has to switch and cover, canoeing and rowing, and those are all great sports. I'm not saying I'm sure you're gonna gather lots of great stories, but I could just hearing your voice when you talk about basketball. And we know you're passionate about that sport. It's only fitting, in my mind. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here. That like, oh man, you should be covering that too. So hopefully you get that opportunity to also do some stories related to a sport that is very that you're extremely familiar with and passionate about. But because I believe canoeing and all these water sports, I think they're in Marseille, if I'm not mistaken. Which is in the south of France. I'm not too sure if where I think the basketball might be in Paris, but I should have done my homework. I'm not a journalist, folks. I'm just out here reporting. But in terms of reporting, what has it been like reporting in the city of Montreal? I know you just mentioned your experience there in terms of sports coverage, and you're obviously based there right now for CBC Montreal. But what's it like reporting in a great sports city like Montreal? And how has this experience prepared you for covering the Olympics?
So, like you mentioned it off the top. You said that my stories play in Ottawa. So this is something that it means a lot to have the network play my stories in different regions. Reporting in Montreal is crazy. There's no shortage of drama. The language debate is always a story. Right there, that is a hot topic. In Ottawa, you might be a bit familiar with it, with the English and the French and all that, because Gatineau's right there. It is like a hotbed for controversy. Not Parliament, National Assembly is just amazing the way politicians criticize each other. The community stories are amazing, So covering Montreal is not easy, but it's also very fun. A rich sports city. We have different sports teams. Shout out to the Montreal Alouettes, who are the reigning Grey Cup champions. So I got to meet the players as they got off the plane with the Grey Cup. So I did that. I covered the PWHL Montreal team from start to finish along with some of my other colleagues. I was at the first game, I was at a playoff game, I was at the Bell Center game. There were so many different events that I was able to cover, and all those things helped me get ready for this. I was there when Montreal was in the Stanley Cup final, and that was the first time I was covering a big sporting event. So there's different things over the years that I was able to cover that have made me ready for this moment. And on top of that, I do a lot of news network hits. So I'm also a fill-in national reporter. So all these little things that I've been doing have helped me get to this point of going to the Olympics. And I'm hoping this is not the only Olympics I go to. I'm aching to go to the next one and maybe the one after that too.
Los Angeles 2028, man. That's around the corner. That's not too far away. And hopefully you get to go. I'm curious to know, Kwabena, as a journalist now, what and all the experience you've gained over the years, what's one thing that has that keeps coming to mind in terms of like you went to school for journalism, obviously, and now you're in it, you're doing your thing, you're gaining your experience, you're covering all sorts of great stories. What's been one of the hardest challenges for you personally and professionally? Not so much subject matter and stuff that you're covering, but in terms of the business of journalism, if you can kind of, I guess, explain to us what some of those challenges may be, if it's one or two that
Yeah. So
keep
I'd
coming up.
say like one of the challenges is obviously like, in this business, it's like it's been getting harder and harder because not a lot of people like news now, right? Because of like everything that's come out over the pandemic and stuff. So sometimes it's hard to appeal to people and it's hard to have people trust what you are reporting about because at the end of the day, people are getting news from everywhere. So like it's like a challenge to appeal to everyone, right? And we are trying to get with the times. We're trying to move digitally. So like that's also a thing that like makes things challenging. Another challenging thing is that like no one's going to be happy. They're hard stories to do, and everyone has their opinion on how the story should be told. So no one is ever happy with the way things are going. So like you'll get emails of like people saying like, "Yo, we love what you did," and then for that same story, you'll be like, "You got it all wrong." So like you just have to make sure that like you know that the story that you did is the right way to do it, and you trusted your gut and you told the story to your best ability. And another thing is that the fact that we're not on social media, like on Instagram and stuff, I was doing a lot of digital content with the CBC Montreal team. But when that whole thing with Bill C18 and like Meta went down, like we haven't been able to pump out that much Instagram content and Facebook content. Like we're doing YouTubes now too, which is great. But it's like it's gotten very hard to appeal to everyone and like more of the younger people, right? So that those are some challenges that I think like are still there. They will be overcome eventually, but those are the things that like I find are really hard in this profession.
Very interesting. I'm curious to know, as someone who works in journalism, and I'm sure y'all are busy all the time. Do you find yourself disconnecting sometimes from news just because, say you're around it so much? When you go home, do you like turn off the radio, the TV, the whatever device you use to consume content? Do you turn it off?
So it's funny you ask that because it goes both ways. Like there are times where I'm like I really need to follow um everything and just be on top of things. There's be like a story that I did and I'm not working and I'm like, okay, I need to know what it is and I'm knee deep in it, or I see a breaking news alert come out on my phone and I'm like, oh my God, I need to know what's going on. So there's that. Like sometimes it's hard to turn it off because I'm like, oh, I need to follow things because I never know what story I will get pulled onto when I go back to work, even when I'm off, even when I'm on vacation. At the flip side, there are times where I just shut it off and I'm like, I'm not paying attention to news. I do not care what the breaking news is. I just want my peace and mind. I need to disconnect because it, like
Right,
some of the stories
right.
that we do, like affect us mentally, right? So like sometimes you just need to shut it off and like just move on with your life. But it can get really hard to do that, right? So while we do that, it's also like tough to um like shut it off. So it goes both ways, but I try to shut it off when I can because it's like it's more healthy to do that than not.
Very, very interesting. I think there's so much there, and I think it's great that you find that balance of shutting it off and knowing when to plug in, because you're right there. You're so immersed in it. I can only imagine, as a journalist, you're in that business, and when you go home, you're um because I think workaholism is an issue in that field. And correct me if I'm wrong, because
Mhm.
if You're always looking for the next big story. You're always listening. Now, what aspects of your reporting style or strategy do you think will be most effective at the Olympics?
One of the things that I really love to do, and I've been doing a lot of, is I do a lot of I do
Streeters?
a lot of live interviews.
Okay.
Yeah, I do a lot of live interviews. So I think that that's really going to help me because when I'm on the network, I do a lot of live interviews with people and I'm always asking questions on the fly. And I think that that's one of the things that is really, 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 really going to help me succeed and do my job to the best ability because that's one of the main things of my job is to tell people stories and get like information out there. And I love to do the live interview thing. So being able to do that live interview thing is going to help me for the Olympics because everything is pretty much always live.
Will you also do you speak French, by the way?
Yeah, I speak French too.
Will you be covering on the French side as well, or just strictly English?
Non, je pense que je vais faire un peu de français. So like, yeah, sorry, I was throwing off there. I will be doing some things for French. I think maybe it might just be questions. There might have to be like a report that I do here and there. I'm mainly there for like all teams, and I'm like the only guy who's doing kayak, canoe, and rowing. So I'm definitely going to have to do both languages to some capacity, mainly English, but I'm ready to do some French too.
As a sports fan, when you interview athletes, what do you how do you approach interviewing athletes?
I try to focus on like different storylines. And like I said, like sometimes the storyline is not the fact that this person lost. It's like how did they get here? It's like why like how was it important for you, how important was it for you to get to this moment? You know, you've been training so long just to find their stories, right? I really feel like that is the way to do things, is to tell people stories, but not only just focus on the niche like, oh, like statistics. It's like how did they get there and all that. I think that those are the stories that are really going to help make or break a story in terms of like just like appealing to everyone, right? Because I think it's really important to appeal to everyone, especially the non-sports fans. So those are the little things that I think will make a huge difference.
Sorry about that noise in the background. My cats just decided to join us, so I just threw my cat on the couch there. Let's go back and talk a bit more about in terms of you know these athletes you're going to be interacting with and sharing their stories with Canadians because Canadians are going to be consuming this content. You know, as I mentioned at the last games, you guys broke records with on all of your digital platforms. So clearly, there's a demand for this content. What do you think for athletes when they're under the pressure of performing at the biggest sporting event in the world? Are journalists there to like, especially when an athlete loses? How do you? And I know you spoke about that. You know, you don't want to just talk about the wins and the losses, but how do you approach an athlete after such like losing, you know, which can be borderline traumatic for some. You know, they've trained their entire lives for this moment. You know, they've qualified. It's a long journey. It's a long 4 year journey, depending on the sport, this, that, and the other. It's very complicated, and I think as fans, we don't hear the nitty gritty of the process. You know, I think as end users, we kind of. I think the more we know about them, the more we can appreciate their effort and their 4 year long campaign, you know, considering all the injuries and all the other stuff that's going on that's public, you know, per se, for these athletes. How do you approach an athlete who's just lost and who maybe, you know, fans were expecting more? Like, how do you communicate with someone who's in that state of mind and respect that maybe they just don't want to talk?
I think like it depends how you go in with the question. Like, if like an athlete we thought was going to podium but finished seventh, right? And I have to do an interview with them. I'm going to straight up ask, like, this isn't the result that you wanted, but what can you learn from it? Like, sometimes it's about changing it into a positive spin. Yes, we know the person lost. We know they're upset. I'm not going to ask them how they feel about losing, but what are they going to do to make sure that they can be there next year? Or if it's a returning Olympian who's been at the Olympics for like the three past summer games, it's like you've been here before, you've won it, you've lost it. When you look back on your career, what are you going to remember? Like, just like find a way to ask them the question without like focusing strictly on you lost, so there's different ways of getting that story out there, and I think that that's the best way to do it, is just like approaching them with humility. And you ask me like what are some of my best attributes. I think one of my best attributes is that I go in and I just like I'm a people person first, right? I'm a human first, so I'm able to use that and talk to people in a human like way to get them to open up to me, because that's just how I am as a person. I'm a personal person, a personable person, and I think that that really comes out when I'm reporting. So that's the same way that I would approach these kinds of stories.
It does come out. You have that energy. We see it. And how are you going to be able to control yourself when you're on the flip side interviewing someone who says made the podium for gold or silver or bronze, and they're super excited, and you kind of have to interview them, and you're excited for them. How are you going to be able to, like, do the interview when you're also ecstatic
Oh,
for them?
I like my thing is like sometimes you have to match your story with the energy.
Mm.
So I'm going to like literally say, this is an amazing moment in your career. This is the first time that you have won a gold medal. How did you get here? What is this moment like? Your
Mm.
family's in the stands. Like, I'm gonna build off what I know with them, and I'm gonna use my charisma and energy to match their energy because it's a happy moment. So let's all be happy together. There's no point in me toning down my high energy self just because I'm reporting. No, I'm gonna match their energy, and we're gonna have a good time, and I'm gonna tell a good story, and they're gonna get asked good questions because we're going to be able to be in sync and have the same energy levels at the same wavelength.
Fascinating. In terms of energy management, if you don't mind me asking, you'll be covering these games, and it's going to be a grind, right? Every day you're going to be producing or telling a bunch of stories, doing a bunch of hits, this, that, and the other. A bunch of content will be produced, and that's fantastic. How are you going to ensure that you keep a certain rhythm? Because I'm sure at the end of the day, any journalist there is going to be exhausted, right? And then the next day it's
Oh,
all over again. So what's the plan for energy
oh,
management?
it's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be worth it. I think it's just about staying locked in, like knowing that like after these games are done, I'm going to be able to take the time to relax and enjoy myself. So while I'm there, it's all zeroing in. Like everything that I'm doing now is tailored towards preparing for like one of the biggest moments in my professional career. So I know how much effort and how hard I work to get there. So like tiredness is not going to scare me. I don't even drink coffee.
I was just gonna
And
ask you how much coffee you're gonna consume. You don't
no,
drink coffee?
I don't
What?
even drink coffee, man. Like
What?
I work these morning shifts and everyone looks at me like, how do you not drink coffee? I do not drink coffee. I'm an anomaly. I don't drink coffee and I have this much energy all the time.
My goodness, this interview is probably going to be another 2 hours trying to explore how you don't drink coffee. That's incredible. So may I ask, have you ever tried coffee, or you've
I
never
have
tried it?
tried as like coffee and like I just don't like it. I've tried, and it doesn't even do anything. Like one time, like I have to drive home from Ottawa late, um, to figure out how to get home. And let me tell you, the fact that I was trying to use Red Bull to drive, the caffeine did not hit me. It actually made me even more tired. The drive was
Wow.
horrible,
Wow. Interesting.
right? So yeah, that's what I dealt with.
So caffeine doesn't do it for you.
No, it does not.
Interesting. You are an anomaly because I think for most, I think it would impact, it would be a performance enhancer. Like you could, go and do your thing. But that's interesting. By the way, that friend of yours that said you should be on a talk show or a talk show host. That's a good friend. Are you still in touch with this person?
Oh yeah, he's one of my best friends. Yeah, like yeah, there's no way I wouldn't be friends with that guy. Like he's one of my best friends. And like without him being there to like kind of give me that nudge,
Right.
I wouldn't be where I am. So like yeah, no, we're good friends. Like that guy's invited to my wedding whenever that happens. Not going to be anytime soon. But like yeah, like we're still like best friends.
What do friends and family think about your career now in journalism and so on? Or what sort of feedback are you getting?
Everyone is surprised because like when I was in school I wasn't really the best student, you know, so like people um just didn't understand like how did I get here and how did I change to become like the way I am, right? So everyone is surprised but they're extremely happy for me. When I told my mom that I was going to the Olympics, she was like speechless. And
Wow.
like my mom has been one of my biggest supporters, right? We're like we have a really good relationship. And like for her to like just act like that was like it was special. It was special.
Hmm.
And that's when I knew like I really made it, right? I made a big impact.
Two more questions for you, but before I ask, I'm curious to know how are you going to be documenting this experience for you personally? Are you going to be doing anything like writing in a journal, like a daily log of your like no, and it's not for the public to consume, but like for your own, as a souvenir of your experience. What do you plan on doing?
I'm probably gonna I'm gonna document it for sure. I have to. I think it's just very important to be able to like share this with like a lot of people, right? And even if I don't share with a lot of people, I think just for me, like I think you're right, like a journal or like a daily vlog, yeah, this is day one, I'm here, like I'm going to do that even just for myself because I think like this is a moment that I'm going to remember forever and I need to document it. So I'm going to be posting on Instagram more than I do. I don't really. Um, I'm just there like on it, but I'm going to be like documenting it because this is like the biggest moment in my career. So, and I want it to be remembered even just by myself. So I yes, I will be documenting it. Yes, I will be looking at different ways to document it. And yes, like I don't know, I don't think I'm gonna sleep like the days leading up to it because I'm just that excited and I'm just that proud of myself for actually getting to this point where I can go through and make the Olympic roster for reporting.
It's awesome, man. And one thing I know for journalists, they don't want to become the story, but I think for fans of content, as if it's sports content, this, that, and the other, like it's always interesting to see the POV from the journalist and kind of get their story, you know what I mean? Like their perspective, well, what their takeaways. I think that sort of behind the scenes content is always compelling because it kind of to some extent humanizes the journalist, the reporter that's on the ground doing all this work and their team. You mentioned it's a whole team. There's it's a whole machinery, right? And we don't always see that. We see the end product, what's being broadcasted and edited and this, that, and the other. I've been seeing a lot of this, that, and the other, pardon me. But the point is, it's always interesting when we get to see the behind the scenes, and especially um, when journalists kind of share their personal experience there. So I'll be following you on Instagram. Two more questions for you. How do you think you've kind of answered this already, but I'll still ask you because I wrote it down. How do you think covering the Olympics will impact your career and approach to journalism in the future?
I think like it's going to be that culture shock of like reporting internationally, right? I'm going to meet so many different people. I'm going to meet so many different um like athletes, and I think it's just going to give me um a different perception of how I want to like be a journalist later on. Like it's just going to be amazing to like learn and to think about um how I'm going to remember the moment, but also like how much work I'm going to be doing. And I think it's going to make me appreciate the job more because working those long 12, 13-hour days for like 2, 3 weeks straight is
Damn.
going to make me appreciate doing a 9-hour day where it's not that intense. So I think all of that is just going to make me appreciate doing what I do even more.
You're going to become a coffee drinker by the end of this, my friend.
We'll see about that.
By the way, I believe you were nominated for the on Gala Dynasty last year,
Yes.
this year. Is that correct?
Yes.
What does being nominated? Tell us a little bit about this gala. Just set it up for us, and what does that mean for you personally?
That what does that mean for me personally? That means that my community recognized me. Like the Black community recognized me as someone who's doing something in the industry. Um, and I like I'm super, 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 super excited about it. Because like there's not many of us. There's not many of us in this industry
Mm,
um who are Black and reporting, right? So just to be able to be there and be able to be like, yo, a Black organization in my home province recognizes me 2 years in a row as one of the best top 5 journalists in my profession in radio and television. I was ecstatic. It's like an award that I want to win just because of what it means to be a Black journalist in this industry. And like I'm speechless every time I get that email saying like you're nominated for a Gala Dynasty. I will win it one time. I will win it soon. But even without winning it, I am just so happy with where I have came, where I've gone, what I have done as a journalist. And I'm just excited for the next chapter. And I hope that Ghana Dynasty keeps recognizing me and keeps recognizing that I'm doing what I'm doing to um, become the best journalist that I can be.
absolutely, and it's cool that they do this, and it's important because journalism is a tough industry, and it's an important one. I think more and more we're finding out that there is a real need for more, you know, more journalism, in my opinion, and more content that gets to the facts and to the reality on the ground. And congratulations for you for being nominated 2 years in a row. I'm sure you know what I'm saying. Eventually, you'll win it if you keep getting nominated. And I remember, I don't know if it was last year or the year before. One week, literally every day, I would be seeing. I think you were on TV and or the radio, and I was like, man, this guy. And for real, this is what crossed my mind. I'm like, this guy's relentless. This work rate, like you're like a machine. I'm like this. It's like you're a marathon runner slash sprinter. You're like you keep producing these stories, and I'm like he's got to be a coffee drinker. He's got to be. I was like certain this guy's ready to go. Just kidding. But it's you're doing great work, man. I got one last question for you. How has
Hit
your
me.
how has your career in journalism and storytelling changed your worldview? That's a big one.
Oh, I think like it just made me appreciate people more. It's made me appreciate life more. I think just being able to tell people stories, it made me appreciate people more than I used to. You know, like not that I was never like I was always a people person, but like now people are trusting me with their lives, you know,
Right.
trusting me with being the source to their stories. And one of the things that I love about my job is that I get to tell people stories. I get to have a voice for people who don't have a voice. And I also get to be that black man on TV for all the black kids, male, female, who want to do the job that I do, can see someone that looks like them and say, hey, I can do it too. You know, I
Right.
had a Ghanaian, and my parents are from Ghana. I'm Ghanaian myself, and I had him message me from Edmonton saying, like, I saw you on TV. I realized your name. I googled you. I found out you were Ghanaian. I want to do the same thing that you want to do. What advice do you got for me? And that touches my heart every time I get a message from someone saying that, because I'm like, I'm doing this for a reason and I'm making an impact. And that's one of the biggest things in my career.
That's outstanding, man. And it does make a big difference when you see, you know, a fellow person of color on TV reporting and doing their thing. Yes, it inspires, absolutely, it inspires kids and you know what I'm saying? It's important. And yeah, man, thank you very much for your time. I think we went a little bit over, but you know, I really appreciate this interview, and I want to wish you all the best at the Olympic Games. I'm sure you're going to be doing plenty of great work there, and we'll be following along. So start posting on Instagram, man.
Oh, yeah, you know I will.
Awesome. Thank you very much.